Hey everybody, welcome to the Kind Faith Podcast. I'm Jeff.
I'm Marci.
And we're talking to couples. We want to help couples thrive and have healthy relationships. And this week we're picking up where we left off last week. We want to talk about gratitude. And it really comes out of something we experienced this week. We were on our way to lovely Trader Joe's in the middle of a pandemic on Saturday afternoon.
Yes, and there was a line. And what do you think about lines, Jeff?
I've never been a big fan. Disneyland lines at the grocery store. I'm always looking for the shortest way to get through something. And the last several times we've been to Trader Joe's, the line has wrapped around the corner and down the street.
Yeah, and that's not good. And it causes anxiety in me because I know that Jeff is gonna not be happy. And so what happened?
This time I decided to say, I love lines. Isn't this great?
and it was such a blessing. It was like, oh my goodness, he's starting to change the story because he realized that when he comments, it's not even a complaint, it's a comment about the length of a line, that it somehow triggers an emotional response in me.
So talk about the brain science. Let's talk about the brain science of gratitude. We did not pick that up last time, but this time we're going to pick it up. And I want to hand it over to the brain science expert.
Okay, so we're not scientists. I'm just giving a disclaimer, and we're not neuropsychologists or anything.
What?
We're just two people in a marriage for 30 years. So this is just information.
However, we've learned some stuff.
We've learned some stuff along the way. So one of the things that we learned is in the brain, here, I'm going to show you a picture.
Here, why don't I hold it?
Yeah, why don't you
and
hold
then
it?
I can
Since
point
I'm
it out
dropping
like Vanna White.
Okay, so yeah, you have to hold it up higher. Right there. So in the, push this hand forward. So right here, this is the amygdala. And the amygdala, the little green dot. And it's this little almond-shaped thing in our brain that controls our emotions. It controls fight or flight, and it also is in charge of all of our memories. And so when we have trauma in our life, like apparently I did about lines, early in our development, we have trauma, and it could either be rejection or incest, physical molestation, emotional abuse, sexual abuse. I know those all sound ridiculous, and what do they have to do with standing in a line at Trader Joe's?
Ridiculous or huge or...
Right.
Ridiculous may not be the right word.
Right.
Extreme.
I mean, they may not sound like they're connected to the standing in line at Trader Joe's, because they're really awful things that happen to children. And I would think probably 100% of us sometime in our life have experienced something along these lines. And what happens is that we get...
Along what lines? Help us here. So you're saying that we all experience trauma at some level, but it's not necessarily
in our early development.
Incest or abuse. It's just early development trauma, which could be huge, but it also could be small. But it's trauma.
Right. And it's trauma. And whether it's the size of it or the extreme of it is up to you, because it's your trauma, and nobody can put a qualification of amount of what the trauma is, because it's your trauma. And your
trauma, not meaning you get to define your own reality,
No.
You're you. No, it's not that kind of thing. It's your trauma, in that every human being is different, and every human being experiences trauma in a different way.
Exactly.
So somebody yelling at you could be trauma. Somebody yelling at you could just be whatever. So
right.
it has to do with how your brain, not how you maturely or immaturely deal with it. It's how your brain deals with that content as it comes at you.
Well, and for a child who's 3 months old, 3 years old, when you hear yelling, you don't understand it. You don't know if it's about you, if it's about something else, if there's a car coming that's going to hit you, if there's, a dog that's going to bite you. You don't know what it is. So to not have your world be safe creates the trauma, and also creates a thing that is known as arrested development. You stop developing emotionally at that point, and the amygdala is where all those memories are stored, and it's where you have fight or flight, your fight or flight reflexes for getting you to stop quickly at an intersection or whatever, to avoid a car accident.
So what does all this have to do with
standing in line at Trader Joe's? So I was triggered about the line, and I just was
triggered. What does that mean? Connected to the amygdala. What does that mean?
I was triggered by Jeff's desire to not be in a line, which meant that for me, that was like a criticism that I didn't time this right at Trader Joe's. I should have figured out when we could have gotten here so that there wouldn't be a line.
And that was you responding to early patterns set out in your amygdala.
Right. Of that in order to have a good relationship, you need to be perfect. And otherwise you're not lovable.
You making the connection?
So I hope so, because it makes sense in my brain. Which is always a scary thing.
So you're saying that triggers, when you have an emotional response to something that isn't necessarily logical, like it doesn't make any sense in a rational world, not that you're being irrational, that you would freak out that I'm pointing out that there's a long line. However, it's your amygdala responding to trying to address a trauma from early on, that things need to be perfect and together, because if they're not, things are going to happen that are out of control. And your brain is moving to that natural pattern.
Right.
Okay.
So
I'm just trying to help us all get it.
I know, and he's so good at that, right? I'm just going to compliment and be grateful that my husband is really good at that. But at the moment when we were in Trader Joe's, he was said, instead of saying, oh, it's a line, whatever, and being frustrated that he was standing in line, he was like, I'm going to be grateful. I love lines. Even though it was with a sarcastic bent, it was so nice to hear it. Well, here's the thing about the amygdala, is that we can change those patterns in our brain and the triggers if we go from the subconscious to the conscious. And to go from the conscious mind, we have to say, I like lines. We have to say it out loud and hear ourselves say it. And it can change the subconscious memory.
So for me, I get triggered because I want efficiency, and somehow lines aren't great. And so to change the pattern, I say out loud, I like lines. What do you say out loud to change the pattern of your worry that you didn't time it right?
So what I say is, you're okay. You're still lovable. You are, I am lovable.
Marci is.
I am efficient. This line has nothing to do with your,
competency.
Thank you. That's a good word. So, that's how that happens. And it's just such a little thing, but it became a big emotional thing for me. And I was just grateful that Jeff brought it up. And it's like God always provides these great illustrations for us for these videos.
So gratefulness moves you to a place where you're rewriting the script of your brain. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yes. And so what happens a lot with couples, when we were talking about gratitude versus criticism last week, is that, I heard a lot of you saying that, oh, well, you don't know my husband, or you don't know my wife, or she's always blah, 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 or he never picks up his clothes, and whatever the scenario is. And yet, is there really nothing you can be grateful for him, or her, that, and what are you grateful for? And we didn't really talk about that last week. And how do you approach gratitude.
So you're saying that your amygdala can hold you in a pattern of criticism because you're locked in that fight or flight and that emotional pathway of just seeing what's negative.
Right.
Because you're trying to be defensive and trying to navigate it, and your brain is holding you in that pattern.
Well, and you're trying to protect your heart. So if you keep them in that
You're trying to be safe.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're trying to maintain, like what you said earlier, I like that. When you're a child and something happens to you, I forgot exactly what you said, but keeping your world, you're trying to make sense of your world. And one of the things that we do as couples is we keep our we want to keep our spouses in a locked position, and Jeff talked about that a few videos back. But
locked position, we want our spouses to be stable. We want them to be predictable. We want them to be that. Is that what you're talking about?
Because the rest of our life isn't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we go to work and we have people that are being hired and fired. We're dealing with different personalities coming in, going out, and just our different, just jobs that we have to do within our job is constantly revolving. And so when you come home, you just want a constant.
You want stable,
right?
Predictable.
You want stable.
Mm-hmm.
So gratitude. How do we talk about being grateful? And to look at your spouse, or not look at your spouse. I mean, yes, definitely look at your spouse, but think in your head, what am I grateful for about him? I'm grateful that, and you can go to the most obvious thing. I'm grateful that he knows how to dress himself, and I'm not doing it.
I think that's debatable.
And he can feed himself, and he can, he's got a good sense of humor, and I'm grateful that he stayed up, changed his plans yesterday and helped our son with homework. And there are so many things that I'm grateful for, but then that's the first step, is just to get those things in your head. These are the things I'm grateful for. And then
say them out loud.
To say them out loud, because it does start to change the flight and impulse of the amygdala, because it's like,
or the fight.
There you go. And help you to keep running. Like, he came home yesterday, like I think we said last week, I'm grateful that he comes home every day.
Well, let's go back to the line. So if we had let our amygdalas run wild, what would the line have looked like? We would have driven up, and I would have seen a lack of efficiency and a crazy line, and I would have commented how crazy it was that there is a line there. I would have said that out loud and affirmed to my brain that I don't like lines, right? And in affirming that, I've now put myself and set myself in the mode of fight or flight. Now, granted, it's just a line, right? It's not a big thing. But you heard when I brought that criticism of the line, what did you hear? What did your amygdala hear?
So I heard that oh great, that couldn't you have picked a better, like, as in Jeff is telling me, couldn't you have picked a better time that there wasn't a line? Why did you pick this time to go shopping? So,
did I say that?
No.
No. Did I imply that?
No.
No. But that's where her brain went. And then what would your response been to me?
Get over it.
You would have.
I would have been in fight mode.
She would have been in fight mode, or she would have been in flight mode. And so there's two possibilities here.
So I'm either in, depending on the day, and hormone level, like, get over it, or, oh my gosh, do you want to come back at a different time? We can come back at a different time.
Yeah. Or silent treatment, flight mode.
Okay.
Right? So there's a bunch of things
legit.
that she could have done, but at that point, she stopped responding to me, and she's now responding to her amygdala.
Right.
And when I saw the line, stopped responding in relationship to her, and now or even relationship to the line, and I'm responding out of my amygdala. And the key is to rewrite that script for both of us. So we could have turned that into a big ugly fight, right? where you would have given me the silent treatment or been mad at me, and I would have
And
gone,
then
for what? What did I do?
Right.
All I did was say that there was a line. And she's and now she's moving deeper into it, and I'm moving deeper into it, and now all the sorts of other things. Do you see the mess?
Yeah.
Whereas if we had just chosen, which we did this last week, I'm going to be grateful for lines. I'm not going to let the pattern that my amygdala has established for me, that I've established with it. Honestly, it's not that I'm not determining my own future and
He
fate.
still doesn't like lines, but it's better. It's actually, you do now.
Well, I'm going to tell myself I do. But it interrupts the pattern, and that's the power of gratefulness.
Right, of having gratitude. And in fact, it's so important that a girlfriend of mine who is a writer and that does a lot of work with gratitude, she actually wrote a book and she put together Got Gratitude Today Journal by Holly Rouser. And
Hi, Holly.
Hi, Holly. Thank you for being a fan of the show or our videos. But it's a great idea. And what it is that each day,
It's really simple.
Yeah, you write the date and you write what you're grateful for. And what happens is it's a muscle that gets worked. And the more you're grateful, even if it's one thing, he brought in the trash cans. I'm grateful that I didn't have to go out and do it. Or that it's like all of a sudden you think, okay, he brought in the trash cans and he had a smile on his face, and he
didn't have a frown.
Change the toilet paper and the bathroom. I mean,
right. But you can even so keeping a journal about your spouse and the things you're thankful for is great. But you might be in a place where you have no gratefulness and there's just bitterness around your spouse, and you're living there in that hard place. Jesus taught us to pray the Lord's Prayer, and he started it this way: Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. He invited us to start our prayers with gratefulness. Hallowed is being grateful for the character of God. And so if you're at a place where there's nothing swirling around, you can at least start by gratefulness around God and his character. And then hopefully it'll move toward a spouse. So you can keep a journal of gratefulness. You can pray the Lord's Prayer. Is there other things that you found that help?
Thank you. When you were talking about being grateful for God and what he has given you, he's given you life and he's given you another day. And some of you might be, oh my gosh, I've got to live through another day. And if that's your story, we love you and please seek help because we're here for you. But the other thing is to say, you have to change the tapes in your head about yourself and to say, what am I grateful for? I'm grateful about me. I'm grateful that God gave me life, that God chose the parents that the imperfect parents that I had, that he chose them for me. He knew I was going to be born in the family I was born in. He knew I was going to be married to the spouse I was going to be married to. So therefore, it's not like this is just randomly happening.
And to take that a step further, to stand in front of a mirror, this sounds awkward and weird, but to look at yourself, really look at yourself and begin to speak words of gratitude over yourself.
And love.
For your hair, for your nose, for your eyes. It sounds so superficial, but it is so important because it rewrites that script. We tend to only see the negative. And we tend to focus on the negative, and that triggers fight or flight in subtle ways and sometimes big ways, and moves us into locked in neural pathways in our amygdala. And you stop it by expressing simple acts of gratitude around yourself, and then let that move to things you have skills for. You know things, you've done things, you have a history and a past you can be thankful for. There's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So practice gratitude, rewrite the script of your brain, keep a journal, pray the Lord's Prayer. If you only get through hallowed be thy name, you can thank God for who he is, and you can take some time to thank God for yourself. Is there anything else we need to add to this?
No. Well, how are you grateful for me, Jeff?
I'm always grateful for you. Your smile and your eyes and your winsomeness. Did that help? I don't know.
And I'm grateful that you are kind and you're valuable, and I'm grateful that your words are kind, and I'm grateful that,
Thank you.
I mean, you know, and I just things that your spouse does, washes the dishes, you know, whatever, it's huge. So does the laundry, all the things that your spouse does that you may not have even considered. Express it, and express it to yourself. And that, you know, when I do Jeff's laundry, not only am I grateful, he's grateful that I'm doing his laundry, but I'm grateful that God gave me a servant's heart to do that. So anyway, double wrap up.
Practice gratitude.
Practice it, and it's a muscle, and it takes time. So just start with one thing that you're grateful for, and then the next day do 2 things, and then 3, and then 4.
Awesome. Well, have a great week. We're so glad you tuned in
And we're grateful
to this
for
episode,
you.
and we are grateful for you. So God bless you. Have a great week. Like this, forward this. Let us know your thoughts. We'd love to know more. So have a great week. God bless you.
Thank you.